Hi, welcome back. Let's continue talking about the Scrum framework. In this section, we shall discuss about the elements of Scrum. Now, Scrum basically has three major elements. You have the roles, events, and the artifacts. And the Scrum Guide provides the rules that bind all of them together. There are three roles in Scrum. You have the product owner, the development team, and the Scrum Master. Each of these roles has a set of responsibilities and are accountable for certain outcomes. There are 5 events in Scrum. The sprint, which is a container event for the remaining 4. You have the sprint planning, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective. And then there are the artifacts. And there are 3 artifacts that provide transparency when it comes to the Scrum framework. You have the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the product increment. Together, these become the elements of Scrum. Let's get into the details of these and see how the elements of Scrum bring all of the Scrum rules together, and that becomes the basis of your game. In this section, we'll discuss about the various roles of a Scrum team. Now, a Scrum team is basically a group of individuals who are cross-functional and self-organized. Self-organization is something that comes only with practice. A Scrum team is self-organized. That means that they have the autonomy to decide how to convert every requirement into a finished product, the increment. And there are 3 roles that are there in the Scrum framework that help us do this. You have the product owner, the development team, and the Scrum Master. Let's see what are the responsibilities and accountability of each of these roles. The first Scrum role that we have is the product owner. The product owner is responsible for maximizing the value of work delivered by the development team. They are the ones who are accountable for the results. A product owner is a single person, and although they may represent the views of a stakeholder committee, it always needs to be a single person so that any conflicts can be resolved with regards to the requirements that have to be developed by the development team. Their responsibilities include clearly expressing the product backlog items, order the product backlog items such that the highest valuable items are at the top, ensure that the product backlog items are well understood and are clear and transparent to everyone in the Scrum team and any stakeholders who are responsible for the success of the product. No one can force the development team to work on any requirements other than the product backlog, and that's the responsibility of the product owner. Let's take an example of what product ownership really means in a Scrum team. Let's say that a sprint is ongoing and has a sprint goal to achieve result A. You have a product owner who's, let's say, someone responsible in the marketing department, and they are making sure that the product that is being delivered for the marketing department is being delivered in collaboration with the people who are working in the Scrum team. One day, the CEO of the organization comes in and asks one of the development team members to do a very urgent task that is crucial for the marketing department. What do you think that the development team member should do? It's a tricky question because the CEO is the person who's sitting right at the top of the organization, and a product owner is probably just someone who's working in the marketing department. But that's the key where the Scrum value comes into picture. Courage. The development team member needs to portray courage in order to make sure that they are developing only the things which are mentioned in the product backlog and nothing else. In fact, everything that is selected in the sprint backlog is the only thing that the development team is going to work on in a particular sprint. At the same time, the CEO needs to understand that the product owner is someone whose decisions have to be respected when it comes to development of a product. This is the importance of a product owner in any organization. The next role in the Scrum team is the development team. The development team are responsible for converting the requirements from the product backlog into done increments. These are professionals who are self-organized and cross-functional. They are the ones who decide how these requirements from the product backlog will be converted into done increments, and no one, not even the Scrum Master, who is a modern manager, can direct them how to do it. Scrum does not have any titles for people in the development team, and they do not have any sub-teams as well. Although it might happen that people in the development team have specialized skills, but the accountability of delivering a done increment at the end of every sprint lies with the complete development team. The size of the development team in Scrum is supposed to be small, and it's been observed that people between 3 to 9 is a good team size to have. It improves communication and helps with better product delivery. This size does not include the product owner and the Scrum Master unless they are also working on product backlog items. It's quite common for teams to have more than 3 to 9 people. In fact, a product can be built by multiple teams with hundreds of people in it. What's needed is to make sure that when these teams are working on the same product, you still have just one product backlog and only one product owner who's directing the work that has to be accomplished. Let's consider an example of what it means to be a development team member. Let's say that there is a user story in your backlog, which, by the way, is just one of the items that you can have in your product backlog. But this user story is, let's say, to build a login screen. And there are multiple activities that will be needed in order to make this login screen. You might have some business analysts who are identifying various ways of authentication. You might have developers who are actually coding for it. You might have testers who are testing this functionality. But at the end of the day, the story is done only when all of these work items have been completed. This is the accountability of the development team. Having specialized skills within the development team is completely acceptable. What is not acceptable is having done requirements for every functional group. This is the accountability of the development team. The final role that we have in Scrum is a Scrum Master. Now, I usually call Scrum Master the modern manager, and that kind of makes people misunderstand what I mean. The Scrum Master is actually a manager, but not the typical project manager that you might get from, let's say, Project Management Institute or Prince 2 definitions. They are modern managers and they help manage projects in a Scrum way, basically by being a servant leader. They serve the product owner, they serve the development team, and they serve the organization. For the product owner, they help product owner find techniques for effective product backlog management. They make sure that every detail in the product backlog is well understood by everyone else in the team, and they help the product owner facilitate any of the events which are requested by them. For the development team, they are the ones who create the safety net. They are the ones who make sure that any impediments in the way of the progress of the development team is removed. They make sure that any events that needs to be facilitated for the development team has been taken care of, and they coach the development team to be self-organized and cross-functional. For the organization, there might be parts of the organization which have to interact with the development team. And since they are oblivious to Scrum, they may not understand which of their interactions are best suited for the Scrum team. This is where the Scrum Master comes into picture. They help the organizations create a bridge between Scrum teams and parts of the organizations which do not employ Scrum. At the same time, they help plan, lead, and coach the Scrum adoption process in the organization. That's a Scrum Master. They are masters of the Scrum process. They make sure that the Scrum process is followed and make sure that it is effective in the best possible way. We usually say that the Scrum Master provides a safe environment for the development team to do their work. It's funny with that concept because safe environment basically means an environment where the development team is allowed to do unsafe work. And that is the truth. Let's consider one of the examples. Let's say that you have a team of 30 people. As a Scrum Master, how would you divide these 30 people into 3 teams? If at any point of time you have an answer that you will try and get the capabilities of all of the development team members and then divide them equally, well, that's something that the Scrum Master is not supposed to do. That's possibly the resource allocation that you're thinking from project managers that comes with the PMP examinations. A Scrum Master is a skill facilitator. If you have 30 people on a team and you have to build a product, it is a Scrum Master's responsibility to get all of these 30 people and the product owner together, have the product owner provide the vision of the product, and then let the team self-organize to understand how best they can divide themselves to deliver a product. And this self-organization can have every sprint if needed. Well, it may not be the best, but it's possible. Teams decide how they are going to deliver, not the Scrum Master. And this is something that is very crucial. Scrum Master is responsible for coaching cross-functionality and self-organization to the development team. So the question comes, then what is the success metrics of a Scrum Master? Well, there is one of the success metrics which is quite popular, which says one of the Scrum Master's job is to make themselves redundant. I really don't believe in that. for one simple reason. The moment you make the Scrum Master redundant, you do not have a process master, which means all the impediments which are possible to happen will ultimately happen. If you have that kind of metrics in your organization, it's possible to rethink about those metrics. A Scrum Master is the master of the process that makes sure that the safety net always exists. To summarize, the three different roles in a Scrum team are the product owner, who's responsible for making sure that the value of the product is maximized and accountable for the results of the product. They also take care of the stakeholder management. You have the development team, who's responsible for turning the product backlog items into releasable increments every sprint. And you have the Scrum Master, who's the modern manager who acts as a servant leader and provides services to product owner, development team, and the organization. These are the three roles of Scrum. Now, all of these three roles interact frequently in a sprint through events. Let's discuss those in details in the next section.